So, have you ever had, or how many have you had in the last week even, times when you felt like God wasn't working? He wasn't dealing with this huge problem or awful situation that you have. What did you do about it? That song's great. This last week, I had a time just like that. There was a situation in my life I was really frustrated with. Not only was I frustrated with the situation, but I was frustrated with how I responded to it. God, why am I still that way inside? Why am I not changed? Aren't you doing work in me? Why do I still respond like that? And why is this situation still here? So what I did is I went for a bike ride. So I jumped on my bike. This is something I do sometimes. Sometimes it helps if you're mad at God, if you're frustrated with Him. Helps me anyway to do something physical. I went out on my bike and I biked down to Mud Bay. Anybody been biked down to Mud Bay from here? Nobody? Oh, there was a bunch last time. All right, so bike down to Mud Bay. It's downhill almost the whole way, which is great. The way back is much, much harder. It was a very hot day, and I'm biking, and so I'm pumping my legs hard, and I'm praying to God in my mind. I'm letting out all my frustrations to Him, both physically and mentally, verbally in my mind. So I get down to Mud Bay. I am exhausted. Now note, I've only gone downhill so far. I'm exhausted by the time I get down to Mud Bay. And so it's really hot, sun is blazing, so I reach for my water bottle. And my water bottle wasn't there. It had fallen out of the water bottle holder on the back of my bike as I'd gone over bumps and bumps and bumps. Can you believe that? So now I'm down at Mud Bay. I am literally dying of thirst. I'm pretty sure I'm going to die any moment if I don't get a drink of water and have no water. And of course, you can't share someone's water. There's no water down there. Okay, so I think, what can I do? I could sit here and be lazy and just die of thirst. I might be exaggerating a little bit here. Or I can get back on my bike and I can go find a source of water. So I get on my bike and I'm riding back, retracing my steps, pumping hard up the hills this time, looking for my water bottle. I'm looking in the bushes. I'm almost running into cars because I'm not paying proper attention to the road. Finally, I find my water bottle. It was on the trail. You know, some of you might know it. You know that trail in Watershed that's not actually in Watershed? It's on the other side of the train tracks. It's sort of behind that big place where the truckers stop on 91. It's right there. So right there where the truckers stop on 91, there's my water bottle sitting in the middle of the trail. Here it is now. It was this one, Momentum water bottle. Anybody shout out for Momentum? So here's the deal. So Momentum water bottle, you can see the dent on it. It's all scratched up, not just from falling out that one time. So I am dying of thirst. I get off my bike. There it is, lying on the ground. I pick it up. I'm so excited to drink from it. Oh, this is going to be good. And this has got the same water in it from that day, okay? So I'm so excited to drink from it, and this is kind of how it went. Oh, it's warm. It's been sitting in the sun all that time. I'm dying to have a cold drink, and my water bottle is warm. That is the worst. Has anything that bad ever happened to you? I don't know. So we're in a series right now called Build More Fires. And the title of the message today is Warm Water Warning. We are in the last section of this series where we're looking at a few fire images in the Bible from the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation. The revelation, or big reveal, as we talked about last week, that was given to this guy named John, the Apostle John, who was one of Jesus' best friends. And so the two big themes in this series of messages, if you are just tuning in with us, or if you need a reminder, which I do every single day, I don't know about you, if you need a reminder, the two big themes, you can write these down. They're the first 2 points in your notes if you are here on site. Number one, we need to build the fire. The fire we're talking about is the fire of God Himself. It's His presence, His power, His love, His devotion, His intensity in our lives. And it is God's fire alone, not human fire, not human strength, that is able to save. Save us from what? All the stuff, all the garbage in this life, sin, death, hell, which we talked about a number of weeks ago. It is God's fire alone that is able to save. So a big message here in this series is we've got to stop and remember human strength alone is never going to win the day. It's only God's power, okay? But we've got to do some stuff. So when we say build the fire, we can't build God's fire all on our own, but we don't have to. He's provided it for us. Many of you who are listening to this message today are Christians, are believers in Jesus. If you are not, what you have to do, and what many of us have done, is simply this. It's kind of a progression in life. First of all, we realize that there is a God. We look around the world, just look at your own hand or something that happened in your life, a plant, and recognize that it could never have happened unless someone had created it. There has to be a God. And we recognize there's good things in life, so maybe, hopefully, He loves us. The second thing we recognize is there's bad stuff in the world, and there's bad stuff inside of me. Deep down on the inside, I am twisted and messed up, and I cannot fix that on my own. I need help from somebody, and the only person who can possibly help me is God, the one who made me. And then we recognize that Jesus was sent by God to die on the cross for our sins. And so we go to Him, we go to God, and we say, God, I give up. Like, I suck at life. Can you just fix it for me? I'm willing to give it all to you. And if you do that, if you say, I believe in Jesus, I want to follow you, I'm going to give you my life, He always says, yes, I'm going to fix it for you. I'm going to forgive your sin. I'm going to show up in your life. I'm going to give you my fire living inside of you. In fact, God says, I'm going to come and live with you every day. And then you're going to live this whole new life. Now, it's going to take time. You're not going to become perfect instantly. But that's how you become a follower of Jesus. And we're looking today, build the fire. And so God's fire lives in those of us who have given our lives to Him. But what often happens, and what our passage today in the book of Revelation is about, is that fire has a tendency to die out, especially if we do nothing. If we do nothing, that fire will die. We have to do something in order to allow God to come into our lives and make that fire roar. Make it burn brighter. And it's that fire alone, we said, that has the power to save the world. So our next point for the series is this: gather the people. Our mission here at Community of Hope Church is to help people grow in their relationship with God and with each other. We can't do that on our own. We have a small part in that. The biggest thing we can do is, as a group, as a community, as one church, we keep each other burning brightly. We spur each other on to love God more, so the fire of God among us as a church is burning bright. That will draw people toward God all on its own. All we'll have to do is little things. Hey, do you want to come to this event? Yeah, we're going kayaking. And then they meet someone that's different than they've ever met before. Someone with the fire of God inside them, and that changes lives. So gather the people. Build the fire and gather the people. Those are our first 2 points. Now, where we're going today, we're going into the book of Revelation chapter 3. If you were here last week, you heard from Pastor Philip. He introduced this section. So John was his best friend of Jesus, hung out with Jesus a ton while Jesus was on earth, and then that was when he was in like his 20s, or he might have even only been a teenager when he was hanging out with Jesus. Now, boom, fast forward. We're at the end of John's life now, or at least he's an old man. And he's been all over the Roman Mediterranean world telling people about Jesus, telling people about God, and lots of people have tried to kill him. This has been a theme in John's life. Lots of people have tried to kill him, but because God wanted him to stay alive, and you can't actually beat God. That's not possible, because He's God. So no one could actually succeed in killing John. And so we heard about this last week. The emperor of Rome had tried to kill him, and he failed. So the emperor of Rome was like, this is ridiculous. Why can't I kill this guy? Let's just ship him off to an island where he can't do any more harm, can't teach anybody else about Jesus. So he's off on this island, and he still does lots of teaching about Jesus, and God uses him to change the whole world from that island. It doesn't matter where you're at in your life. It doesn't matter what's going on. God is in control. He can use you to accomplish the purpose that he made you for, no matter what is going on in your life. So we saw last week he had this vision, right? And that vision was kind of scary, right? It was Sunday morning, and John was by himself. There was like nobody there. Maybe just one or two people with him. We're not sure. And he can't go to church because he was exiled to this island. So what's he going to do? He has church right there in his living room, like many of you are doing right now on live stream. He bows down. He's worshiping God. He's saying, God, even when I don't see it, you're working. I know you never stop working. I just wish I could see it. And God says, okay, I'll show you. And I don't know, that's a dangerous prayer to pray because he sees a vision that scares him to death. Like he doesn't actually die, but he says he felt like he was going to die, right? Remember last week that vision? So he sees Jesus as he actually is. He sees Jesus as he is on the inside. He sees that in a vision on the outside. And what he sees is what he's describing. He's using images to describe something that he can't really get across to us, what it was like. He says, when I saw him, I fell down on my face as though I were dead. And he had to pick me back up. And so the images he uses to describe Jesus are things like, okay, so his feet, which were the least scary part of him, were burning like a flaming furnace. And the only way I can really describe his face to you is to say it was kind of like looking at the sun. It burned my eyes to look at his face. And he started to speak words, and when he spoke words, I don't really know how to put this to you, but the words cut me right to the very heart of who I am. It was like a double-edged sword was flying out of his mouth at me. And those are the words that we're going to look at today. We're going to look at some of those words. What Jesus told him was, write down what I'm about to tell you. I'm going to write you 7 letters that you're going to send to churches in a certain region. But these letters were also for the church, all the churches to read, not only then, but throughout history. I'm going to write you a letter. We're going to look today at the most difficult of those letters, the hardest one, the last one, written to a church in a city called Laodicea. Can you say that 3 times fast? Laodicea. We failed. All the front row failed. So it's written to this church in Laodicea, and the letter is 100% rebuke. So over and over again, he's going to say to these people, you're doing the wrong thing, turn around. You're doing the wrong thing, change. You're doing the wrong thing, change. This is written to Christians, to people who have given their lives. This is written to a church, very much like us. Now, recognize that not all the letters are just 100% rebuke. Some of the churches, he says good things to them, like you did this that was good, you did this that was good. One of the churches, he says everything you're doing is good, just keep going. All of these letters are for all of us some of the time. But we need to hear this letter because certainly what he says in this letter applies to each one of us, to our church, much of the time. So we need to hear it and not get offended by it. All right, so we're going to read through it, the letter to the church in Laodicea. I'm just curious. I know you guys can't respond to me online. Actually, you can. Write something in the comments. How many of you would say, yeah, I'm familiar with this letter. I know I've heard this letter before, the letter to the church in Laodicea. And how many on site? Raise your hand if you're familiar with this letter. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, see, to me, yeah, I'm a pastor, so I focus on this stuff all the time. I would think like everyone has this letter memorized, but apparently not. All right. Here's how it goes. It's written to an angel, but that just means the church collectively. It means the leader of the church and therefore representing the whole church, okay? A messenger, the messenger of the church. To the angel of the church in Laodicea, write this, John. These are the words of the Amen. The faithful and true witness, the ruler of God's creation. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So, because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. Woe! I am about to spit you out of my mouth. You say, I am rich, I've acquired wealth, and I don't need a thing. But you do not realize that you're wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. What? I counsel you to buy from me gold refined in the fire so you can become rich, and white clothes to wear to cover your shameful nakedness, and salve to put on your eyes so you can see. Those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline, so be earnest and repent. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. Whoever opens the door, I will come in and eat with them, and they with me. To the one who is victorious, I will give the right to sit with me on my throne, just as I was victorious and sat down with my Father on his throne. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Now, maybe we could just stop there. Do I really have anything to say that's better than that? Absolutely not. But let's go through this letter and talk about it a little bit. We'll talk about it in 3 sections, and then we'll use an illustration to kind of wrap our minds around what is he really getting at here, okay? So the first section, and this will be the third point for your notes. If you're on site, you can fill this in. The first section of this letter, we could say what Jesus is communicating is something like this. Actions speak, and warm water gets dumped. Actions speak, and warm water gets dumped out. What would you do if you had any other choice in my situation with that water bottle? Would you drink that lukewarm water that had been sitting on the trail? No, you'd go get the cold water. That water is useful to you in that moment. That's what you desire, is the cold water. It's the good stuff. Hot water is also very useful to us in many situations. After I got back from that bike ride, maybe not so much, it's not as great on this day because it was really hot out, but think about in the winter, after you've been outside in the cold or you've exerted yourself, you get into that warm shower. What does that feel like? Oh man. Hot water is useful to us in so many different ways. The illustration that Jesus is using to get across to us is that lukewarm water is useless. He cannot use it. Now, what does it mean that it's lukewarm water? What is that? Well, we can gather that it's people who are not on fire for God. They're not people whose love for God is burning brightly. But what is the way that we can tell that someone is lukewarm or not? How do I know if I'm lukewarm? And the key here is action. The key here is action. He says, I know your deeds. I know the things that you're actually doing, and that's why I know that you're really lukewarm. Think about it for a minute. If you are lukewarm in any particular area or subject area of life, you might have intentions to do things, but never do them. Has that ever happened to you? So, for example, for a long time at my house, I had a yard, a front lawn, that was absolutely destroyed. And I live in a neighborhood where everybody keeps their lawn pristine. And I felt like, wow, I'm an awful example of, just being kind to my neighbors or whatever, taking good care of what's been given to me. My lawn is awful. And I had the intention, I had a little bit of warmth or fire or passion toward the idea of fixing my lawn. But I never did anything. And the fact that I never did anything demonstrates that I was lukewarm toward lawn care, right? Which is not really that big a deal. If you're lukewarm toward lawn care, you're going to have a bad yard, but your neighbors might not like you, but it's no real consequence in the end of your life. But here we're talking about toward God. So, the lukewarm are those who they may have good feelings toward God. They may be great people who show up at church all the time. They may be good people who help their families and they have good feelings toward those around them. They are normal people. This is the really striking part of this letter. This is the part that should convict us. This letter is being written to people who, if we met them, we would say, hey, that's a good guy. She's great. These are normal, good people. And we can see that they think they're normal and good. We'll see that in just a moment. But it's their actions that demonstrate that they are lukewarm. It doesn't save us. We can't fix anything by the things that we do. But what we do demonstrates where our heart is really at. If we are in love, if we love God deeply and passionately, if He is changing us and we are allowing Him to build that fire in us, it will break out into activity, action in our lives automatically. We'll meet someone in crisis and we will have a deep desire to help them, a desire that's deep enough that we actually go do it. If we're lukewarm, we'll meet someone in crisis and we'll have a mild, soft desire to go help them. And we won't do it because life is busy. So, this brings us to our second point. Is that Jesus is talking, He's talking to normal people here, and He's talking to people who don't know. They don't know that there's anything wrong with them. So next point for your notes is this. You think you're okay, but you aren't. This is what Jesus is speaking to us. We see in the next section, what is it that these church members, these good people in the church in Laodicea, what do they say to each other? They say, well, I'm rich. I've acquired wealth. I don't need anything. Now, does this mean that they had tons of money? Probably not, although it may be that that was a sticking point for some of them. But what he's talking about is they just think that their lives are decent. Their lives are okay. There's nothing terrible or really wrong in my life. I'm good. I don't need help. I don't need anything from anyone else. I met someone recently, this was such a striking conversation to me, when we were talking about the need for God's mercy in our lives because of how messed up we are. And this person said to me, I don't need God's mercy. What do you mean? I said, oh my goodness, I need God's mercy every single day, every hour of every day because of what is really there inside me. So the people in this church that he's writing to, they don't recognize. They think everything's okay. And they think it in a number of different categories here. Jesus tells them what's real, okay? You're wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. You think everything is okay, your life is just good, but really, it's terrible and awful. That's what wretched means. You think you have everything that you need because things are going kind of okay. The sun is shining, it's summertime, you're out kayaking, so everything's good, you're camping, you have food, you have a house, you have some friends, you think you have everything you need. Actually, no, you're poor, you are destitute. This is what he's saying to them. You are pitiful, he says to them. You're like someone who's in such need that they're desperately in need of someone to come and have pity on them. That's your real condition. And he's saying this to people who look like normal, good people in the world. Okay? He says a couple of other things to them. He says they're wretched, pitiful, poor. He says that they're blind. They cannot actually see reality. This is true. Most of us, most of the time, what we think is, however things seem to me, that's how they really are. Right? We see this all the time. However things seem to me, that must be right. And Jesus is saying, no, the way that it seems to you is actually not the truth of the situation. He says that they're naked. What does this mean? This one is striking. It means that they think they're good people. And they think that they look good. They think that when the people around them see them and then when they look at themselves that, there's some problems in my life. Sure, I'm not perfect, but actually I'm a pretty good person and that's pretty obvious. Have you ever felt like that? Jesus says, no, in fact, you are naked. To God, what's on the inside of you, which you can't even see yourself, is 100% transparent. The dirtiness, the rottenness, the twistedness that's really inside your soul is 100% visible to God. To him, it's like you are naked. In the ancient world, this was an image of shame. Wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. So, in the third section of the letter, what does he say? He says, you've got to do something about it. Remember, build the fire, right? So you've got to actually do something. The lukewarm people are in the most danger because God can't do anything with them if they're not willing to take action. Even people who are actively against God, if they're passionately against Him, God often is able to use those people more because they're taking action and He can redirect. You remember this from a couple of weeks ago. He can redirect an object in motion. But if someone is lethargic, complacent, they just think everything's fine, God is stuck. He's not going to come and force you to be who you should be. And if you're not willing to take action, the lukewarm are useless to Him. He's about to spit them out of His mouth. So He counsels us to take action, do something. And the action that He says, and this will be the final point for your notes, is this. Go to the source. Go to the source and find these things that you need. He says, believe me. I know you don't recognize that you're wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. But believe me, take my word for it. I can see that you are in an emergency situation. So stir yourself up like you're in an emergency situation and go to the source to get what you need. And who is the source? The letter, in fact, has already told us who the source is. It is Jesus Himself. In that very first line, Jesus is described as the ruler of God's creation. That word in the original Greek language that it was written in is the word arche. And that word can mean two things. It can mean ruler. It also means the source or the beginning. And in this context, it means both. He is the one who rules the universe. Why? Because He made it. He's the one who rules everything because everything exists through Him. This is the huge revelation. Yes, Jesus was a human being who walked around on the earth. John knew Him as his best buddy. They went camping together. Jesus died on the cross for the sin of the whole world, and now John is able to see in this vision, that dude I went camping with is the one whose whole face is shining like the sun. The whole universe was created through Him, and He is in control of absolutely everything. What must that have been like for John? Yeah, I remember when we were around the campfire. What? This is the shocking proclamation, the shocking news that the early Christians and that Christians today are trying to say. This guy who walked around is in charge of the whole world. He's the source, and we've got to go to Him. So He says, come to me and buy gold refined in the fire. What does that mean? Come to me and buy true wealth. True wealth is not any of the stuff here. It's not any of the stuff here. It's not any of our accomplishments. True wealth, as we'll hear about next week from Tyler, true wealth is knowing God. It's a relationship with the one who created you. And if you have it, there is nothing else like it. Everything else pales in comparison by an infinite degree. There's nothing else like it. And we have to keep that firmly in mind. He says, come to me and buy true wealth. You don't have to be just having this fake wealth that's all going to fade and doesn't really satisfy you. You can have hope, peace, joy, real love inside of you, but you got to get it from me. That's the only way. Buy gold refined in the fire. And He says, come to me and buy white clothes to cover your shameful nakedness. What does that mean? We think we look good. We're really naked and shameful before God. What He says is you actually can get real goodness, but you got to go to Jesus to get it. If you come to Him and ask Him to forgive your sin, He will give you in God's eyes His own goodness, His own righteousness. You will get to have a relationship with God as if you were as good as Jesus. That's what He's saying. And over time, He will actually change what's on the inside of you. It takes a long time, probably more than we have in this life. Buy clothes for me. And then He says, buy salve for your eyes so that you can see. So you're blind, you can't see reality, but if you go to Him, He will show you what is actually true in your life. The situations in your life are not what they seem. They are not what they seem to be. And only Jesus can show you what they really are. But you got to go to Him, and you got to stir yourself up to do it. The next thing that He says is kind of twofold in the letter. He says, look, don't get really mad at me for saying this to you. He says, those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. When somebody comes to you and says, "You are wrong," how do you normally react? "No, you're wrong," right? He's saying, don't do that. Don't do that. You're not going to win that fight. So this time, recognize that I'm rebuking you. I'm telling you you're going the wrong way, not because I hate you, but because I love you. I love you and I want you to get to the right place. And then he says, in addition to that, so he says, don't get offended by this. Accept my rebuke and then stir yourself up like you were in an emergency situation. He says, be earnest and repent. What does that mean? Be zealous. Get some fire inside of you and go do something. Change the way that you're acting. Okay, illustration to bring all this together, and hopefully we can wrap our heads around what's he actually saying. I'm going to switch our camera view here. I went camping last weekend. It was so awesome, 20 Mile Bay, Harrison Lake. Can I get a shout out? Yeah, it was pretty sweet. I went camping with some people who are in this room, actually, and it was amazing. I learned lots of things. I learned that there are some people in our church who love chainsaws. I won't go into all the things I learned. It was an amazing time. Amazing. Go camping with your friends. Get around people who have their focus on God in the right way. It'll only make your life better. One of the great things I learned that I'm going to share today is I learned how to move a campfire. Did you know that you can actually move a campfire? This is amazing. Okay, so check this out. So we have this campsite. So imagine this. We're at this campsite, and we've got this amazing fire going on. It's roaring. We've had it going all day. It's got like 20 logs in it, and it's flames up to here, but it's inside a barrel. Don't worry, it's protected. Wonderful, but there's another campsite like about 20 meters that way. There's not another campsite, but another fire circle that's right down on the beach. And it's getting to be night, and we're like, oh man, we want to have a fire on the beach. Oh, but it's going to be so hard to light a whole new campfire. So then this one guy who's camping with us, we'll leave him unnamed for today, but you know who you are. He's like, you know what, you can actually move a campfire. So he showed me how to do it. So what you do is you go to the campfire, you bring your hatchet, and you just go, boom! You just put it right in there. You pick up the log that's on fire, and he carries this thing 20 meters over to the fire ring. He doesn't touch it like this because that would burn your hand. Don't do that. And boom! And then we put some stuff on here. It looks so easy to move this campfire. And so like the next day, I tried it, and I found out it was not nearly as easy as it looked. And so this will be our illustration, the reasons it's not easy. The log in the fire is burning. It's got huge flames on it. It's also got coals all over it, right? Now, so I can see that. I see that log is going to keep on burning. That log is in a good situation with its fire. Okay? Now, I put this hatchet in it. Once it leaves the fire, sorry, you know I just like hitting the hatchet into the wood, so I'm going to do that a few times. Once that log leaves the fire, what happens to the flames? Boom, they go out immediately. Now, the coals don't. The coals are still glowing there, but the flames are gone. Now, the coals on that log don't realize it. But me, having a bird's eye view of this situation, I realize those coals are in immediate danger of going out completely. They are in immediate danger. And so I don't take this to the fire slowly. I move quickly to the campfire on the beach, and I set this down. And even then, maybe there's a couple logs there. Even then, they don't burst back into flame, do they? The coals think they're just fine. We're rich. We've acquired wealth. We don't need a thing. The coals, we're glowing. We've got heat. We obviously love God, those coals think. But they are in danger of going out. And so I've got to do everything I can. Carter was helping me because I couldn't do this on my own. He's shaving bark off of trees, and he's getting it on here, and we're blowing. He's blowing on one side, I'm blowing on the other, so we can get this fire to come back to life. Finally, it took us like 10 minutes to make this thing roar back to life. And even then, it's going out and coming back. Finally, we get it to the place where it's burning solidly. It's got enough heat in one place that it's not going to go out on its own. This is what Jesus is trying to get across to us. If you look at your life, any particular part of your life, and you realize, I'm lukewarm there. I have a desire to follow God. I know he's in my life. I love him, but it's not burning bright, and it's not breaking out into action, into me actually doing things. You are a coal. You're a coal on a log that's been removed from the flame, and Jesus is saying you are in danger of going out. Immediate danger. You got to stir yourself up, even though you don't realize it. You got to get back. First of all, get close to other coals. Get close to people who are hot, who are burning brightly for God, so that you can heat each other up. This is why we have the church. And this is one of the dangers right now with COVID, right? I mean, I recognize not everyone can come, but we've got to find ways to heat each other up, to be spurring each other on to love God more, because if we don't have that, we're going to go out. And then we got to let God blow His fire, His Spirit into us so that we can come back to life till we get to that place where together we are burning brightly and we're not in danger anymore of going out. The last thing that Jesus says in that letter, we'll close with this so the band can start coming back up. The last thing that Jesus says in that letter is this. He says, even though you don't see it, I am outside the door knocking. The door of what? The door of a human heart, yes. But even more so in the letter, he is outside the door of the church. This church in Laodicea, they're not paying attention to him. He's outside knocking, asking them to open the door and let him in. I am outside. Whoever opens the door to me, I will come in and eat with them. He's going to come in and provide a meal, everything that's needed. He's going to come in and build a relationship with you, but you got to let him in. After that, he says, to the one who is victorious, I will give all these amazing rewards. What did they do to conquer? How were they victorious? All they did was let Jesus in. Your life, how do you succeed? How do you win at life? Not by anything you do, except opening the door to let Jesus actually come in and live in your life. That's how you win. Let's pray, and we'll continue in worship.